Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Square Circle podcast. I am your host, Marie Shadows. I am also the writer to the Square Circle Society Wrestling newsletter. On today's episode of A Chit Chat Series, presented by the Square Circle podcast, I am interviewing James Beard. James Beard has been in professional wrestling for over 20 years. And we talk about everything that happened in Japan because he is well known for being with NWA and all the territory promotions and just being around in the 80s, the boom of professional wrestling, in my opinion at least. So we talk about Japan because Japan is not normally covered in most interviews. And we talk about various stories, anything that he experienced, and some really good feel-good moments in that interview. So if you are interested in that, continue to watch because there's a lot that we all learn together. So without further ado, let's get on to the interview. I'm Marie Shadows. I'm the host of the Square Circle podcast and also writer to the Square Circle Society. And I've been in wrestling for about I guess I love wrestling since I was little, since I was 7. I'll include that. But then I started working for WWE in 2018, and then now I do podcasting and commentary with Goddesses of War Wrestling, which is an all women's wrestling promotion, and just in and out of the business and stuff like that. So this is something that I truly love. It's like my calling and stuff. But for people out there that don't know about James and myself, we actually met through a friend of ours, Duke, and I was hoping we could put Duke over. So how did you meet Duke?
Probably the same way you did, online. We started kind of going back and forth a little bit, and had a lot of private conversations, that weren't on the social media, and we just got to know each other that way a little bit better, and it kind of became friends. Really, it's kind of weird with social media sometimes. You don't meet anybody in person, and you become really good friends with them, and that's kind of what happened with Duke. He's a great guy.
Yeah, I would definitely have to second that. I love talking to him and picking his brain and stuff. And then as I was talking to him about you, the one thing that interests me is that aside from you working in the business for 20 years, right? Or is it more?
Yeah, it's been. I was thinking about this last night. I was in Arkansas doing a show there, and it's been actually about 39 years now.
That is amazing. We should definitely be celebrating that, together. 39 years.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Congratulations on 39 years. So because you've been in the business for 39 years, you've seen it all, you went everywhere. And I know other people will ask you the famous questions for NWA and all the territory days. And I love all that stuff. I really do. But what really got me was all the time that you went to Japan. Because
Right.
my content is mainly focused on New Japan Pro Wrestling, and I love those guys, and I have good relationship with some of the wrestlers over there. So I wanted to jump into that. However, if you can give all my fans a quick rundown of your 20-year career and what you actually do in professional wrestling before we jump into the other things.
Okay. Well, I started out in world class, the latter stages of world class, and then, of course, I worked in USWA when they came into the Sportatorium and global until the Sportatorium closed. Basically, I was there all the time. That was kind of my home base. Started working over in Japan, late 80s, early 90s, with SWE. Kendo Nagasaki brought me over there, and I worked over there for several years, going back and forth. So it was a great experience, and I've worked with WWE or WWF, WWE, whatever.
Mhm.
And pretty much all the promotions at some point in time, I've done a little bit here and there, and of course a lot of the independents as well.
Yeah, and you're also known as a referee. So before we get into Japan, how did the referee spot, well, not really spot, I guess position came about? And then how did that go through wrestling? Did you enjoy being a referee? Did you want to do something else in wrestling?
Yeah, that's how I started in wrestling. I was actually playing music in Dallas, and got to know a bunch of the guys there that were working in the sportatorium, world class and all, and they kind of started figuring out I might have a little clue because I've been watching wrestling since I was a kid, and maybe from a little bit different perspective, that I kind of had dissected it a little bit, and they started kind of pushing me toward, yeah, I think you'd be good at this, and I resisted for a while, and then I started sticking my toe in the water a little bit. And Bruiser Brody was really one of the main guys that kind of pushed me into the business, and once I started doing that, I did some spot shows and things, and the next thing I know, I'm working at the sportatorium, and it started getting kind of in demand, I guess. But my goal really was that after I got into it was really to get on the creative side more, and that's something that I've really enjoyed doing over the last many years, really.
So, jumping off of that, because that's exactly why I went into wrestling, other than the fact that I wanted to be a wrestler. But then when I got the opportunity to train, my brain was like, no, this isn't for you, So I have the creative side. I have my degree in creative writing and a publishing certificate. What kind of advice can you give myself, well, to me and to others that want to pursue this from the creative side? What advice would you give to us?
Well, I mean that some of that's just, you just have to be in the right place at the right time, and try to try to make sure that you contribute as well as you can when you get the opportunity. Some of it's luck. I really kind of that's something I wanted to do. It's something I had always thought about, but when I started working over in Japan, I ended up in a situation with, actually, Randy Savage had a lot to do with it. He came into a tour over there. Well, we were working with WWF wrestlers on every tour. I was working for the Japanese company, but Randy came in on one of those tours that they sent him on, and he wasn't particularly happy. He was upset about a payoff and about the way they were using him, and he wasn't really happy about being in Japan. And I met him. The typical thing for me to do over there was I would work a tour, and then I'd stay over, work in the training center, and then I'd do another tour, and then to come home. Well, this was the second leg of that, and they took me over to the hotel where the guys were coming in, and which is what they would normally do. And when Randy came in, we started talking, and I could tell he wasn't happy about being there.
Hmm.
And we started talking. We stayed up all night, uh, basically going over things. I kind of explained to him how things were over there, and that the company was kind of in a situation where they were getting some bad press and needed something to kind
Hmm.
of perk them up a little bit. And we started coming up with ideas, and he started getting excited about it. And we came up with this angle, and he said, I'm gonna pitch this angle." And I said, "Well, cool, that'd be great, And he went to the office the next day, basically, and said, "Look, I'm gonna be over here. I want to do this." And they liked it, and Randy gave me a lot of credit, and wanted me to be involved in it. And after that, it went off really well. And after that, they started coming to me for ideas and for finishes, and that kind of thing. So it changed everything for me, really. So it was kind of a stroke of luck, because Randy was in a bad mood. and, and yeah, and after that, it just kind of snowballed, and then everything that happened over there started happening over here, because it was such a big deal in those days to go to Japan anyway.
Hmm.
It's a little bit different now, but in those days you had to be really on top of the game, and you got a lot of publicity for going over there, and a lot of I guess stroke. It kind of starts coming with that, and,
Hmm.
and and I started finding out when I'd come back to Dallas to the sportatorium and working there, then they were coming to me for things more then too. So it just kind of snowballed from that. And so it's kind of like being in the right place at the right time and being able to contribute a good idea when the time comes. And you get that opportunity. That's what you have to try to take advantage of. And for me, I was very fortunate that's the way it happened. And they kind of, it just kind of built my career from that, really.
I really do love that story. Thanks for sharing that. helps me a lot while I'm thinking about it, because I do tend to help a lot of the wrestlers behind the scenes if they ever need me to like look at their match or like give them an idea for like something that needs to be done. I just don't like really put it out there like that, because I think that's just like a personal thing between me and like the wrestlers that are there. Because I just think that the world, like in social media, I think when it comes to wrestling media journalists, as like we call them, not everything has to be put out into the public and stuff. So I like to take a backseat to be like, okay, I help out these guys, they know about it. So that's sort of hearing that story and like how it all came about for you and like the luck and everything. It's definitely having me think. It's a wonderful story, and I love that. So going off of something that you mentioned about like, back in the day when you go to Japan, people had like a lot of publicity behind it. It was great. Do you think it was harder for certain wrestlers to get into Japan because it might have been like you need to know somebody?
Well, in those days, it was much harder because
Okay.
there, there were fewer companies for one thing. Uh,
Yeah.
Companies were the main ones on the top. Were very exclusive. You had to really be as far as wrestlers go. You had to really be very very good to get in there. And only the better workers really got that opportunity, and some of it has to do with just being knowing the right people too. That helps, obviously, but it was very exclusive in those days, and for a referee it was even more exclusive because as far as I know, I'm the only gaijin referee that's ever worked for a Japanese company. And I'm the other guys have gone over there and done tours and special events and that kind of thing. But as far as actually working for the Japanese company, as far as I know, I'm the only one that's ever done that, and I've done it for three different ones. So it really made my career over there because it changed the whole perception of me over here. It's kind of weird, but it did. It kind of changed everything for me over here because I was got giving that opportunity over there. And Kendo Nagasaki is really the guy that brought me over and gave me that opportunity. And he was kind of after that he was kind of the guy that sponsored me anywhere else I went.
Uh,
So knowing the right people and getting their trust and that kind of thing makes a big difference. And for me, it was the breakable lifetime, really.
that is fantastic to hear. How difficult was the language barrier? Were you able to pick up Japanese very quickly, moderately? Like, how difficult was it?
It's really kind of weird. I mean, in wrestling, most of the wrestling terms are in English, and
Hmm.
so if the Japanese didn't have a term for it, they just make it in English. Uh,
Yeah.
so that part of it wasn't really hard at all. And you do a little pantomiming, trying to get a point across. Sometimes, as far as just socially goes, it took a little getting used to, and I got to a point to where it's kind of weird because I felt like I could understand it better than I could speak it,
Mm.
which kind of strange. I don't know. I've heard other people say the same thing when they've been over there a while, but I got to where I was really very comfortable with that and communicating in some way. I certainly wasn't fluid in Japanese, but I learned enough that I could get by. I could eat and,
Yeah, yeah.
and
um, s-
uh,
Go ahead.
yeah, that kind of thing. But as far as the wrestling goes, it really wasn't hard at all. In fact, the my second time over there, they started, like I said, they started bringing me over. I do a tour, and then I work in the training center, and which got me started training guys. That was kind of the start in that. But what got me into that was I was they asked me to sit down and write down every wrestling term I could think of.
Uh,
And not just terms of inside the ring, but about the ring, everything.
mhm.
I sat there for several days writing all this stuff. I couldn't believe I could remember all these things, and I wrote all this stuff down and everything. And they actually made a book out of it to use in training. And so that was kind of I guess, I don't know. It was kind of an opportunity to get another little thing and another little feather in the hat, I guess. But they had a couple of guys in there that they were trying to push a little bit and trying to get ready for their first matches. One, I was a young sumo guy, and so I would get in the ring with him instead of trying to communicate it in English. I'd try to show him, what this is and that is, and this move and that move, and how to do this and that, and so it kind of became my avenue into teaching too. So all of that just kind of worked together. Hito was the head trainer, and so I worked
Yeah.
with him there, and we had a good relationship. So it got to be something I really enjoyed doing as well. And then that carried over here too. I started working with some guys over here, so it everything kind of fit together.
And it definitely sounds like, teamwork makes the dream work of like showing people. I always think that wrestling is such a visual type of creative sports combat type of thing going on that we have. And most of the times people learn better by like showing them visually,
Right.
just in case if there's that like language barrier and stuff, but I just love Japanese wrestling. You did mention that like one of the students was a sumo wrestler. Was he like making his like wrestling debut? Because I don't think sumo wrestling and like regular Japanese wrestling sort of like mix sometimes,
Yeah, well, it's kind of strange. It actually does in a way because you'd be surprised how many guys started out in sumo that ended up in
Oh,
professional wrestling over there. Yeah, this particular Ishin Riki he was a small sumo. He not a big guy at all, but he had when I first went over there, he had just retired. He was very popular. I mean, obviously, he wasn't big enough to win all the big tournaments, but he was very popular with the fans because of his size and the way he competed. And he had just done the ceremony where they cut the hair and all of that. I don't remember all the terms and
mhm.
everything. They do this big ceremony when they retire from sumo, and
uh,
and they had brought him into the company and were starting to train him for professional. And but a lot of sumo guys or a lot of professionals from Japan actually, even some of the guys we know well, like Haku. Haku went to Japan originally as a sumo to train as sumo, um, and that's
oh,
so Sakurada or Kendo Nagasaki, they were in the same class. Yatsu was there's a lot of guys were sumo. Kinyu started out in sumo. So it was kind of one of those things where you get in there and as a sumo, you might find out that, maybe I don't have a shot. I'm not big. I'm not 500 pounds, so I'm not going to push these guys off, but I can get in professional wrestling and do something else. And that's what happened with a lot of guys. So it's there is a connection there. And we worked in the sumo hall over there sometimes, and we
yeah.
would sumo wrestlers at shows, and they were big fans, so you do a show at Carrick Hall, and there'd be sumo guys there, So there's a connection there, and kind of a mutual respect.
Okay, so I learned a lot because I didn't know that there could have been like, that connection. I'd never really thought about it that way because most of the time I'm watching like, New Japan Pro Wrestling. I watched like Noah back in the day. The only person that might have been like part of the sumo like wrestling culture would have been like Takeshi Morishima when I first saw him in like Ring of Honor so many years ago and stuff, just because of his size, because he was a hefty
Yeah.
guy. So now like you putting that into perspective, I'm like, okay, I can see it now. But the interesting thing
John,
is that you mentioned
John
Haku and
yeah,
what happened?
yeah. John Tenta
Oh,
was a sumo. Earthquake.
oh,
Yeah, he was over there training as a sumo as well. So
oh.
yeah, even some Americans, that have gone over there and done that. Yeah,
Okay. I
yeah,
learned some more new stuff. That's fascinating. Yeah. I don't put okay, so look, I don't put like those are things like together because like I guess in America we're just so used to like people just being on like the hefty side just because they're on the hefty side. They're like super heavyweights. So I don't associate that with like sumo wrestling and like sumo culture. But
yeah.
hearing this, I'm like, oh, it makes sense now. It's okay, cool. But speaking of Haku, do you have like any fun memories and like
Yeah.
stories you could share?
I've got so many fond memories of Haku. He's a dear friend, one of my favorite people in the world. He really took care of me a lot over there. We hung out together a lot. He took me places that a lot of them, I guess, a lot of the guys Gene don't get to go. When he was training for sumo, he had a family over there that was his sponsor, which was common for the younger guys. And when he got out of sumo and went into professional wrestling, of course, the relationship continued with that family. And he would take me when we would be in Tokyo. He would take me to places with his sponsor family, and they would take me places and involve me in things that were just incredible. Some of the activity, the festivals, the activities that they did over there, the Japanese way of doing things. We would, when we have time off and we had a chance to go places like that, he would take me with him, and we would basically live like Japanese for that time. And he's told me since then. I've had the pleasure of being around Tonga. I call him Tonga, but quite a bit this last year or so, and he was telling the stories to other people when we were in these places about how he liked the idea that I accepted the culture and enjoyed the culture and went with him on these things, because a lot of guys don't. A lot of guys would
Yeah.
go feel so out of place, and I was just eating it up. I was enjoying it. And he was talking about how much he appreciated the fact that I did that. And that's why he kept taking me to these things. And yeah, we became very close friends, and we still are today. He's one of the, if I had to pick my favorite people in my whole life, he's one of them. He's right up there at the top of the list. I love Tonga. He's a wonderful guy.
I love it, man. I love it. So wholesome. I really enjoy watching how his sons have developed and taken
Yeah.
over the New Japan landscape. And I'm glad to also call his son Tama, like one of my buddies or whatnot from time to time. Had the chance to like speak with him and stuff like that. So like, you could feel that family, that wholesomeness from like the whole entire family that I
He's very
appreciate.
proud boys.
Um,
Yeah.
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 I know he is. And it's cool to hear some Keen How Cool stories too. Not everyone gets a chance to like really tell stories, about him from time to time, but that was fantastic.
Well, most people think about Tonga Haku, and they think about all the stories about how he's the toughest guy in the business and the baddest man in the business and all this kind of thing. And the honest truth is, he probably was. But I got to see a whole different side of him, a whole different
Yeah.
uh, Tonga. He was, that's how I know him. He's the most gentle, nicest, sweetest guy in the world, and yeah, when I was out with him and doing things with him, I felt very safe for sure. know? but
uh,
he's an incredible person, and Barb too. Barb went with us a lot of times because they're related, and we would hung out together a lot with him too, and just the whole island family are just all the guys that I know, Junior, Samu, all of
mhm.
that I've ever had anything to do with are they're the most uh, I don't know, just the greatest people in the world. I love them.
I'm gonna have to agree with that. I had some really good encounters with like Jacob Fatu and like Aaron Henare, like all
Yeah,
the like
yeah.
Polynesian like people that I know. Like it feels so different, so wholesome and stuff like
Well,
that.
the good thing
Um,
about it I've always loved is they like Fatu. I don't see them a lot anymore, but every time you see them, it's like just you're back there again. And they never forget you, and they kind of treat you like family, and I just love all of them. I really do. I've had great experiences with that group of people.
Yeah, I definitely, man. They definitely do make you feel like family when like you don't expect it.
Yeah.
So like a quick little story that I'm always gonna be like over the moon about it, and until I get Jacob on here, he'll hear the same story too.
Oh,
But the last time I was
what a talented guy he is.
Yeah, definitely, man. So I have the honor of working with MOW as like media press. So I cover their live events whenever I'm able to go. So I remember the last time that I worked the show, he was on there, his whole family was on there too and stuff. And I remember going like downstairs to get like better angles for like, my video and stuff like that. And he touches my arm and he goes, "Oh, you still here, sis?" And like the fangirl in me had to like stay inside because I was about to like fangirl because I wasn't expecting him to be like that, to even tap me and be like, "Hey, I remember you. You still here working?" So what I did was in my most professional way, because I like to be professional at these places, is to say, "Yeah, I'm still working. I'm still getting coverage for the show." But
Time,
that memory will
yeah,
always like be with me.
yeah. In fact, one of my first tours over there was with Jacob's dad and Fatu and
Oh my god.
I don't know him. I know Fatu is Junior. That's what we call him back from way back, even the world class days. But they were on one of my early tours over there, and always enjoyed being around it for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So other than like, putting over the whole entire like Samoan dynasty over, I know Japan is very big on like sponsoring wrestlers and I guess sponsors like referees and stuff like that. For everyone that don't really know about that culture, can you dive a little more deeper into like what that entails and like how that happens?
Well, yeah, generally, if you get fairly well known over there, you'll end up with a sponsor somehow, and they just kind of take care of you. I honestly, after I'd been there a while and gone over there several times, I could go over to Japan and stay for several weeks, and I don't think I ever bought a meal. It was they're just that's just the way it works over there. It's kind of the tradition, and a lot of those guys had people that would come by and sponsor them and take care of them and that kind of thing. So it was just an incredible experience to work over there and be a part of that, and the way they treated the business, like a they took it seriously. Not just the wrestling, but I mean, not just the fans, but the media.
Mhm.
It was treated like a real sport, and that's one of the things I enjoyed so much about being over there is that feeling that we're being taken seriously, and we were covered seriously, and it was incredible, and yeah, the sponsorship part of it was great too, because when you're over there a lot, it can be very expensive. And when you have somebody taking care of you and taking you out and doing those kinds of things, it really makes a big difference to you.
Yeah, I know that a lot of people that I talk to get like sponsorships and they get taken out for like dinners and stuff like that. While you were being sponsored, what was like the main meal that you guys that you always had over there? Because I know like
Oh my
ramen is a big one.
I love Japanese food and to begin with, and the main my favorite is Korean barbecue. Absolutely,
Mm.
you know, it, I can eat a ton of that stuff. It's the guys go over there and they get it for the first time and they just go crazy with it. But that's my favorite for sure.
Cool, because I love food too, and like I want to experience an authentic like Japanese ramen one day, and then like maybe have some sushi, have some fish, but other things I'll be like a little too like maybe not, but I love food either
There's some
way.
weird stuff too. Yeah, I've kind of questioned some of the things that I've tried, and yeah, the ramen, the noodles, all that. That's one of those things when you get to Japan, you get out walking around in the city, especially, and it's just that smell. It's like you
Hmm.
never forget. And a lot of it's the ramen and the noodles and that thing you're being cooked on the street and all that, and that stuff is incredible. It really is, and the sushi, of course, it's just the best in the world.
Yeah, yeah. So being in Japan, so I know that like for New Japan, whenever they travel, they like travel all across the island of Japan to put on the shows.
Yeah.
So the promotions that you work for, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, will be SWS over in Japan, now in
Hmm.
Japan, and then Big Japan is probably the other promotion, right?
Yeah.
So so did you have to like travel across the island
Oh yeah.
to try to get to those places?
Oh yeah. There's
Okay.
probably in Japan I haven't been at one, but probably multiple times really. That was always interesting because the travel, depending on where it was. I mean, if you go like up in the northern island, Agadate or something, you would usually fly up there, and
Hmm.
then you would take trains and things to here and there, and sometimes you'd have to take a boat or ferry to get to one place or another if there was water. The super train that was an experience to get to travel on that so much, and sometimes if it were relatively close, they chart what they called oh, there were really fancy buses, more than anything else. Like some of them had chandeliers in them. I mean, they were really nice, and there were a couple of times you'd have, if depending on the, we had one trip over there, one tour that lasted, I think it was 12 or 14 days. And the weather was bad. Typhoon had come in and it was really bad. We were going down south, so they couldn't fly us. They couldn't take us on the train. And they put us in these big vans. And it was murder. I mean, we'd travel like 10 or 12 hours a day, get out and do a show, and then maybe get a little bit of sleep and have to get up the next morning and go do it again. It was like one day after the other, and we were in the middle of the typhoons and rain. We had one night that we were there on an outdoor show, which they had 2 or 3 thousand people already paid for, so they weren't going to cancel it. And a typhoon came in while we were there, and you could hardly see across the ring. And but it's just so many of those experiences you look back on now that were so Japan. I mean, so it wouldn't happen here. It was there. We had such a crazy trip that time. Had this young boy trying to drive us, and he'd get lost, and we were going down all these little mountain roads where you look down and there's like just wide of a road that we're on, and they're
Hmm.
down here's the river, and it's all going overboard, and there, and it was scary, it was quite an experience. But those things happened over there that you'd never have happen here, and it was
Yeah.
just a great experience. I loved it.
Yeah. That sounds like a freaking trip and a half. Speaking of young boys, how different is the young boy system back then, obviously, to like now? Because now we have the Noge dojo for like New Japan Pro Wrestling, but
Yeah.
like I don't know if there was a dojo back then with like the three companies I
Oh,
mentioned.
yeah, yeah. In fact, all of them had that. Uh, like with SWE, even SWS. I'm sorry.
Hmm.
We we uh we had a dojo, brand new facility and all that, and training center, and the young boys, it was kind of like college for them. They'd pay their tuition or the whatever it was that they had to pay, and it was a 6 day a week deal. They had one day off,
Mm.
and the responsibilities they had, they had to take care of the dojo and cook for themselves, and when they get it, they come in and train in the morning, and work until, I don't know, I can't remember the exact hours now, but then they'd take a break, and then they'd come back and do weight training that night. So it was every day's business, like going to college. And it was tough, and most of them, a lot of them didn't get to get in the ring for sometimes for months, because it was all on the mat, and all basic training, and that kind of thing. So it's a very intense situation for them, and not a lot of them make it. To be honest with you, I was really fortunate. I still hear from some of the guys I worked with, I trained with, or helped train back in those days. So they're scattered, Yeah, even the sumo that I told you about earlier, Ishin Ricky, he owns a bar over there now, and I still hear from him and Hatanaka and the guys that I worked with over there. You develop that relationship with, and I actually lived in the dojo with them during those
Oh.
sometimes when I would be those periods of between one tour and the next when they would keep me over there. At first they give me an apartment, and then they started putting me in the dojo in an apartment in the dojo. So I was with those young boys, and I saw what they did and had how they had to work and all that kind of thing. And that was a great experience as well. And you got to really appreciate how hard they work just to get the opportunity. And some of them never get there. Some of them never get that chance. Never get that first match. But some of them find other ways. Maybe they become a referee, or maybe they do something else in the business. But they have to go through all that process just to get there. And the guys over here, I'd come back over here and work in one of the training deals over here where Chris Adams had a training center in Dallas, and I'd help him out some. And, they're like once or twice a week, and that was all that was, and it was like, I'd tell those guys, I said, you got it soft over here, and they all want to be stars, after they've been there for a couple of weeks. And they come in first night and have a gimmick and that kind of thing. That didn't happen in Japan. You had to really earn your way before you got to get in the ring and actually have a match. And it's just something that maybe it hardened me a little bit towards some of the guys
Hmm.
here. But it also made me appreciate how hard those guys over there work to get that opportunity.
Yeah, I totally get that. And I can see like the difference like in quality sometimes when it like, comes to wrestling, even though that we say that wrestling is subjective and like, you like what you like, you do what you do. But in order to like truly make it, you gotta like dedicate a good chunk of your life for this. And you also have to be a little crazy to be in this business because
Yeah, a little
it's
bit.
just yeah, just a little bit crazy to like survive at least. But yeah, I do see that there's a difference in discipline too when it comes to the training aspect and like what to do and stuff like that.
Yep.
But speaking still of Japan, was there ever a time that you might have been like double booked during like the promotions you worked for, or was it like you worked for SWS and then like you
No,
left and went
yeah,
to
no, it would all actually NOW came out of SWS. They were having some uh, internal issues. In fact, I've been writing about that a little bit. I'm trying to finish up a second book, and that's one of the chapters in there talking about this. But SWS started out as being the idea was to be a strong style company. And a lot of guys came from different places, to create that company. They got a lot of heat about being a money person, and because they had a big time donor that started it or backed it, and the idea was for it to be like strong style and create these different dojos within the company, and plus bringing in Americans or gaijin, Canadians, Europeans that
Mhm,
fit style. And after a while, the Tinu had this idea or it was maybe it's approached by it. I don't know how it all happened, but Vince McMahon got involved with it, and Tenu took advantage of that, and he wanted to start bringing in the WWF. It was F then guys
mhm,
on the tours, and a lot of the traditional Japanese guys weren't too crazy about that because in those days a lot of the WWF style was. It was less than serious. I put it that way, at least for most of them, and that created some internal issues in the company. And eventually, although it was kind of neat for me because I was getting to work with uh, all the great Japanese guys, and then they'd bring over the WWF guys. I was working with all of them too on these tours, so that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
But the WWF guys had to kind of change their style to work over there because they weren't going to accept, the comedy thing, or the light work. But eventually that came to a boil, and there was a split in the company, and Sakurada Kendo Nagasaki took his group and went one way, and Tenyu, even though he and Tenyu were very close friends, Tenyu took his group and went another way, and there was another group that came splintered off of that as well, and the same money guy actually funded all of them. So when, of course, when Sakurada took his and went that way, he told me, and he said that's what he's doing, and I had loyalty to him, so that's what I
Hmm.
did. And that's kind of the history of Japan over there, though. They've had a lot of the disagreements in the front offices as far as style and that kind of thing. That's what created a lot of those other companies, and so I was never working for both at the same time. It was always like, okay. In fact, when it all came down, he said, okay, you go home for a month. Next month you'll come back. We're going to start a new company, and that's what happened. And and it really kind of ended up good for me because Sakurada gave me a lot more freedom. I was booking a lot of the matches, a lot of the talent. And and it kind of expanded my role a little bit more because he trusted me, and we were good friends, and that just kind of added to my resume, I guess, and so that and in that respect it was good for me. I missed, working with some of the other guys and that went with Tenyu and all, but I, no, I got the opportunity to do something different and expand my role a little bit. So that turned out to be good for me.
That is all fantastic. I would like to pick your brain a little bit more about like the words that we thrown around for like booker and like storyline person, right? Because um from my understanding, like a booker is the one that like makes the matches, and then you have the storyline person, the writer that like WWE has to write out the story and like the dialogue. But I want to pick your brain about like what do you think about that? Like how do you separate them? Just to
Yeah,
dive into it.
that's actually a WWE thing or WWF
Okay.
thing. Um, Traditionally in wrestling, the booker also created the angles, the storylines, and usually it was one guy. And in my opinion, honestly, I think that's the best way. You have one guy pulling the trigger at the end. Uh, um, you don't have a bunch of writers coming up with all this stuff, that doesn't understand what the booker's trying to do and that kind of thing. But traditionally, the booker was the guy that came up with all the angles and the idea. And he might have guys that he trusted, that he talked to, that presented things to him, and he would take them and either approve them or enhance them or whatever. But that the booker in those days did all of that. He was the guy, like Bill Watts in Mid South. He had
Mhm.
other that like Ernie Ladd and Grizzly Smith, that helped him with those things. And at one point, I think Bill Dundee came in as the booker for him. But in the end, you didn't do anything without his approval. But the writing system came about with Vince, and uh, I think a lot of that had to do with the way TV was done, and
Mhm.
they were trying to write their TV like other TV, on television, other episodic things. The problem with that really became obvious for me is that a lot of the writers had no wrestling background. They didn't understand the process. They all they knew is what they saw on TV, and they thought, well, we're going to do this. It sounds really cute, but how you get there? There's always a stepping process to get to a certain place, and And that's something that's really kind of carried over to today. I see that a lot on television, where sometimes you might see something that might be a good idea, but they don't know how to get there. They don't have the
Hmm.
patience to take those steps to get to the point that really makes something, that builds that story, that builds the fans' interest, to a point where they're so invested in it they just want to see what happens next. And that's a problem, I think, in wrestling overall, and not just in TV, but in the independents these days, is they just don't have guys that understand that process.
Yeah, I can definitely see that because sometimes it bothers me too that there's not enough patience for something because you can't like reveal everything like in that first meeting or that first chapter. Like you do got to build up slowly to things. But I just even looking at like wrestling on a grand scale, like back in the day, like in like the 80s, or even like the late 70s when you had like the NWA at like at its peak and they were telling like really awesome stories in the territories. Like while we watch those documentaries, they make it seem like everything was like kind of fast paced. So I'm not sure if that could be it as well. But yeah, sometimes wrestlers just don't like understand like the pacing sometimes. And I think that's also geared to social media, of how like social media wants everything like super super fast. So speaking of like pacing and building, are you a fan of the Bloodline storyline?
Yeah, actually, I'm, because that's one of the few things that they've done that kind of has some of that element to it. It has some of that part where they're taking the steps to create an emotional response from the audience. To me, wrestling, that's what wrestling is intended to be. It's sport, but it's also a creation of a story that builds emotion the fans care about. They want to see what happens next. They want to care what happens to this guy and that guy, and this situation and that situation. And most of the time, the best way to present that is personal issues, and that works every time. Jerry Jarrett that was his thing. He said, if you create personal issues, you got it made. The problem I see with a lot of the TV writing is that they do what we used to call hot shotting, where it's about getting a reaction and not really creating an emotion.
Mm,
There's a big difference in that, and they say, well, people don't have the attention span. Well, I think that's a bunch of bull, because if you watch TV, if you watch even movies to that to some degree, episodic TV is the most popular TV now. You watch Yellowstone. I mean, it builds a story from one step to the next step to the next step, and it creates emotion. It creates investment in those people, those characters, and there's a lot of television and series. If you go into on streaming and you see all these series and all, that's what they do. That's how they build it. And that's what's most popular right now. And yet for some reason the wrestling community thinks that people don't have enough attention span to create something like that. And I think that's wrong. And I think that's what hurts the business, really. That's why the business has been stagnant for several years. The fan base is just not growing. And that's because the people don't get invested personally. They just, they get a reaction. You see a lot of exciting things, and even in the matches, they're structured that way, where it's about just that reaction here and a reaction there and a reaction there, instead of building up a situation where I really care about who wins this match. And I understand what they went through to get to that point. And that's just, it's a lost art almost, it seems like. The funny thing about it is, you hear all the young guys talking about, they understand that and that's what they want to do, but yet it doesn't happen. And I think a lot of that has to do with leadership. It's from the top.
mm.
They're not getting that opportunity to create that way.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to agree. I could definitely see it from like both sides and stuff. But then social media became the rise, and whatever some random person says, people take it as like gospel, and like that's sort of like your, well, not us, but like other people's like mindset have to be like, oh, we have to think like them, and like, not get into the wrestling as much as you can, because like wrestling is great when you like immerse yourself into the stories and into the characters, and like people who do it like on a very high level, like going back to like New Japan, like there's a reason why like I love covering New Japan, because there are guys there that take the time to like have the fans immerse themselves into the story, into the characters and stuff like that, and some really great work and whatnot. I don't know how we as a community online can like change the damn perception of it, because like I would love to do that. I would love to somehow change the mindset of people, but I don't even think I can do that to let them immerse in like stories and
It
stuff.
just, well, like I
Uh,
said, it starts with leadership. It starts at the top. And what is your purpose? I get, I know Vince McMahon understands what I'm saying, but he's made a lot of money doing other things sometimes, and you start getting into that I guess that rut of doing this over and over again,
yeah.
and it's hard to go back to those basics sometimes. I think one of the big problems with AEW, the reason they don't really grow, they've got pretty much the same level of fan base that they've had since they started, is that very reason, that most of what they do, I mean, they've got some great talent, incredible
Hmm.
talent, guys that can have great matches, but a lot of their presentation is about just getting a reaction. Is hot shotting, and you're just not going to grow a fan base that way. I mean, you're going to keep that same, what we call smart mark fan base, uh,
Yeah.
and and the biggest mistake you can make in wrestling is to play to them, because they're not looking for that emotional connection. They're just looking to have a good time and yell and scream and talk about how much they know about the business, and and the more they talk, you find out they don't know anything at all, and that's not going to grow your fan base. The fan base of professional wrestling has always been pretty much the same thing. The people who really care about it. I can remember the days of going down the sportatorium and walking down that aisle and seeing a lot of the same old people in the same seats every week, and they're there because they care. They really cared
Hmm.
about those guys were doing, and what was going to happen to them, and who won and who lost, and why. And they're just a whole different mentality that I think is missing in the business.
Yeah, definitely. There is a difference when you kind of like let go of like the social media, and you watch the wrestling and you watch your friends, and you have that good feeling of like, they come so far, you get to cheer for them and like react to them. Even when like I was doing commentary for Invictus, which is another promotion over here that was on hiatus. And there's two wrestlers that I know, Jay Bougie and PJ Savage, and they have like a long history of like fighting and like having the team falling apart, and I've like watched their whole entire like story like unfold. And then when they got into the ring and did their promo, they were like breaking my heart because I was just like, you guys are not doing this now to me, right? Like now of all times you guys are doing this. So like I let that out, because it's sort of like I watched from like start to like now, from like through the journey, and it's something different when you do that as like a fan,
Well,
while you're doing that.
and you make a good point too, because you know what's going on. You understand that it's work. That things are manipulated, but at the same time, if it's manipulated the right way, and if it's presented the right way, even knowing all those things, you care. Yeah,
Yeah.
and
uh
and I tell people that all the time. As long as I've been in this business, and as much as I know about it, which I think I know quite a bit, if I see something that really gets me
mhm.
and draws me in that way, I can buy into it and find myself sitting there really caring about who wins and who loses and what happens to them. And if you can do that with somebody who's been in the business that long, you can do it with fans. And
Mhm.
it doesn't matter that they know what's going on. That's another one of those things that's kind of a misnomer. Yeah, everything's, the door's been opened. The social media has exposed everything, so it doesn't matter what you do anymore. Well, it does. It's just like a movie. It's just like a book. People know that those things are manipulated. Those are written. Those are predetermined. Yet people
Hmm.
get involved in them because they care about the characters and they care about the process. And the fact that you pass that by and ignore that in wrestling is a big mistake.
It is, man. Speaking about all this too, I don't know if you're watching WWE Fastlane yesterday, but during the Seth Rollins and Shinsuke match, when Shinsuke pushes Rollins off the ladder and he falls to the table, and even though Rollins is getting up because he's that type of fighting champion, Michael Cole is screaming at him like "stay down" and whatnot. And I felt that emotion of like he truly cares about like everything that Seth is going through, and to like yell at him and see that emotion is kind
Yeah.
of refreshing. Just because like Michael Cole had like a really nice refresher of being a commentator, because I think he was like burnt out from all the times, according to him and everyone else, like Vince yelling in his ear and stuff. But to have that emotion and going along with the story and being like, yes, Seth, stay down. It's okay if you lose. Like you got to go home and take a rest.
And
Yeah.
yeah, that's a big part of it. Of course, on TV, you have that advantage of having a commentator and people who are trying to narrate the story and get those things across. And if you have somebody who really understands that it's like a calling a sports event. If he shows that emotion and he shows that feeling that's there and points out those little details that maybe fans don't see sometimes, then
Hmm.
and it enhances all that process, that feeling, and yeah, I can see how he could feel that way about getting a little set free, I guess, to feel those things. And some of the best wrestling commentators that's ever existed, that's how they did it. That was about telling that story in the ring.
Yeah, that's exactly what I try to implement whenever I'm on commentary, to make sure that like I elevate the wrestlers, the story, the fans, so that way people listening at home could be like, "Oh, this was a very good match to get involved in." I try my best when I do that, but yeah. Other than that, so I wanted to ask about. I don't know if you heard, but WWE recently got a new broadcast partnership media rights deal. It's a mouthful, but with I'm probably gonna butcher the name, but it's over in Japan. Their streaming service of Abema, and people out there could correct me. In your experience, because of like just being around the business and like rights here, deals here. Are you excited for this partnership? Do you think it's a good fit between Japan and WWE working again together?
It's hard to say because it depends on what they do with it. It can be good, uh, but at the same time, if it's just about marketing and that sort of thing, then they'll make a lot of money, but they're not going to change the business. If
Okay.
they're about if they're about really presenting a product that creates what used to be over there,
Uh-huh.
but that feeling, that yeah, we're taking this serious, then yeah, that might be interesting. But
So, oh, go ahead.
yeah, no, I did that, but if it's just about a marketing thing, where it's just about making more money, then I don't think it's going to change a whole lot.
Okay, because I was gonna add that like per the press release, it's that Japan will now be able to watch Monday Night Raw, SmackDown. They saw Fastlane. They're gonna get SummerSlam. They're gonna get a WrestleMania, and the NXT will be like video on demand. So all that is going on the streaming service that Amoeba has, and also like Pro Wrestling Noah is on there as well too. So to me, I'm like, this is a good thing because like you get to have more fans included and stuff. You can have that pipeline of like more Noah wrestlers maybe showing up as like a one-time deal for WWE, and then like maybe sending like Nakamura over there again to like Noah and stuff, sending EO and whatnot. So that's why I was asking if like, you thought it might have been like a very good idea if,
Well, it
for this deal.
can be, and
Uh,
that just one of those things that's going to start at the top. You know,
mhm.
how are they going to manage it, and how are they going to use their creativity to make it interesting. If it's just about having matches, then that might create a one-time deal or something like that. But if you really want to create something that people are going to invest it in, then that's a good opportunity to do it if that's what they go. But if they go down that road, but it's yet to be seen.
All right. That is true. I'm just excited for the partnership because anything can happen. I think that we're in a very good like era of wrestling where it feels like anybody could get an opportunity, somebody can like do something good. And like it feels good like all around. So my last question, which is basically about uh championship belts. I asked this to like everybody. In no particular order, what are your top five favorite championship belts?
Well, number one's easy. It's NWA. That's absolutely number one, and way above anything else, as far as I'm concerned. It's just classy. It has tradition.
It does.
It To me, it still has a lot of meaning. I understand that NWA isn't at the forefront of the business now, but they're doing some good things, and they're trying to rebuild that brand where they're taking care of the legacy and all. But that belt to me means more than it's just a real world championship belt. So that's easy. That's
Uh-huh.
one. Um, the WWF belts are kind of irritate me a little bit because um, they're kind of weird looking as far as the designs go. I mean, they have that spinner belt and all that kind of thing. They've done all kinds of crazy stuff with it. And in all honesty, when you have a guy that was the only thing about that, guys like Ric Flair and all, when they win and lose a belt 15 or 20 times, it kind of loses some of its uh, I guess prestige to me. But uh, I don't really watch WWE for the belt anymore because it doesn't seem like that's the goal, which
Mhm.
should be, but it's not. It's other things, and just I don't know. That's just me, and other people may feel differently about that. Um, most of the belts I really liked were the traditional NWA belts, but I got to handle some like New Japan belt. That's the heaviest dead gum thing I ever picked up. It's almost like doing a lifting. But that one was kind of cool. The world class
Mhm.
the world class Texas belt was really cool. Had the red stake thing in the middle of it and all. I loved it. I'm trying to think of some others that I mean, I've held so many of them. I mean, that's one thing about being a referee. You get to hold a lot of belts. You don't have to defend them.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that was like three, unless you could like think of two more.
Oh my gosh. The Intercontinental belt, I kind of like it.
Hmm.
And it seems to me like that belt almost means more than the other two in some ways, because it seems like it's more like a goal, to get
Yeah.
there. The others just kind of like it's like a tool where you switch. Intercontinental seems like it's had more constant to it, and it's more traditional, I think. So I like it. And oh my goodness, trying to think of another one that I really liked. Um, well, the tag team, the NWA tag team belts, I like that. That was kind of
Hmm.
cool. And has a great tradition. And had the opportunity to. hang on to it a couple few times. It's I guess those are the ones that I think I've mostly. I'll probably get off of here and think of something else, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, this has been such a wonderful chat. We can go on forever and I could pick your brain forever for like just things. Because I truly just love this business and want to make it as far as I can. And it was a great opportunity to talk with you. So now please do us all the favor in putting yourself over.
Well, I've got a book that's been out for a while. It's called The Third Man: My Life is Times Inside the Ring and Out. It's been out there for a while. I'm trying to finish. I keep telling everybody this, and I've been working on it forever. But I am actually really close right now to finishing the second book, and it's going to have a lot of things about Japan in there. The first book was more about the personalities I worked with, especially in the Texas area. The Von Erichs, the Bruiser Brody, and Gary Hart, and Skandar Akbar, and Freebirds, and all those guys. So my relationships with all those guys, my experiences with them, that's kind of the focus of that first book. There's other things in there, but uh, this one is a little bit more about my experiences in Japan and overseas and Germany and the GWF. Didn't say much about that in the first book. USWA and a few other things with guys like Eddie Gilbert. There's a
Hmm.
chapter in there about him, and just a little bit different take on things. So I'm hoping it's well received too. So I'm looking forward to that, and I'm working with a couple of one teaching promotion in Louisiana. Dan Davis, a friend of mine for years, is got a school down there, and I've been going down there about once a month and trying to help those guys learn. I'm kind of, I guess I'm at a place now to where teaching and trying to pass it along is really kind of my main goal. And when I get those opportunities, that's what I'm trying to do. I do a few clinics here and there. I work with a group called Texas Style Wrestling, and that tapes in Addison, and we're building some momentum now, and doing some good stuff. I think it's Rodney Mack and Jazz, and I are a big part of that. Tim Storm's a part of that. It's something that's kind of coming along really well. I kind of hesitantly stuck my toe in it at first, and now I'm getting a little more involved, and I'm enjoying that. And I just, I still do a few independent shots here and there. I just got back from Arkansas about 4 o'clock this morning, so I'm kind of halfway asleep. But with Bayou Independent Wrestling down there, and I go down there with them a couple 2 or 3 times a year, and take a few shots here and there. So I'm still active, not as
Hmm.
not is in the ring as I used to be, but trying to still pass it along and teach when I can and be a positive contributor.
Well, first of all, I'm glad that, you're doing all of this and wishing you the best and like all those opportunities come your way and stuff. And thank you for actually like staying up. It must be like the jet lag or something, but damn, you got home at like 4 o'clock in the morning and we decided to do this. But I really do highly thank you for your time. And I hope that we can talk soon and whatnot. But
It's
yeah,
my
thank
pleasure.
you. All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed that interview with James and myself. It was amazing. We all learned a lot together. And James is always welcome to come back on a chit chat series presented by the Square Circle podcast. If you guys enjoyed that interview, make sure to go tell a friend about it. It will be available on Spotify, on the wrestling newsletter, the Square Circle Society, which is free for you to sign up, and also Patreon if you would like to support me and my adventure and my career in professional wrestling further than anything now. Which basically Patreon gives you access to Google Meet with me. You get to hang out with me, you get a front row experience about what I do behind the scenes in professional wrestling. I am a commentator and I am a media press personnel. So I go to events and cover them. And then We also do roundtable discussions and talk about professional wrestling and have a very good time with other wrestling fans with like minded ideas like you have. So if that's something that you're interested in, sign up at the Patreon, patreon.com/ Marie Shadows. That helps me out and it definitely helps you out because you get to sponsor any future vlogs that I have coming out based on wrestling, based on the indie circuit, and any type of media press that I am available for. So you automatically get to sponsor it. Your name is in the credits, your name is down in the description below. So again, if that's something that you're interested in, along with everybody else, you also get bloopers too. So if you like bloopers, you can sign up at patreon.com/ Marie Shadows. And don't forget to sign up to the newsletter, marieshadows.substack.com, because that is the ultimate wrestling hub for free. So make sure to go tell a friend. Thank you again for watching and listening to this interview with James Beard and myself. I will see you guys on the next interview.